A joke. Well, yeah, that's my fault. My spell checker wasn't working that day.
He did it. He did it.
Besides Mike, you're the only person that's mentioned that. Welcome to Reflections this afternoon. I want to clear one thing up first. And most of you know that I was trained as an engineer. But we have some very astute English majors and teachers who have noticed that my spell checker was not working and the proper spelling. I'm not going to tell you which word. You'll have to figure that out yourself. Well, welcome this afternoon. This afternoon to Mike Sexton, as he reflects, properly spelled, the tale of two careers. Now, Mike and Sharon are no strangers to the Roanoke Valley, and in particular to Rockingham County, north of us. They've been residents of Brandon Oaks for a little over a year, and they live on the first floor with their dog, Murphy. Okay. I met Mike at the Tuesday morning Bible study group. Now, typically, when we're not engaged with Pastor Olivier in extensive theology, we share embellished stories and juicy gossip. And let me assure you that Mike is a master at embellished stories. He is a man with a ready smile, considered opinions, and a perceptive outlook. He also plays the banjo, and he's got one big redneck RV. So getting to know him today will be fun. He says that questions during his presentation are welcome, and or if you'd prefer, you can hold them till after he's done. But welcome this afternoon to the Tale of Two Careers, Mike Sexton.
Thank you, Buster, and thank you all for coming up this afternoon. As Buster said, we've been going to the Tuesday morning sessions for a while now, and way back, Buster said, Mike would like for you to do a reflection. I said, no, Buster, I don't do that. And I got away with that for a while, and I made the mistake recently of saying something about my two careers, and that was the end of it. He said, you got to do your two careers. Now, I have to explain that my career has been all over the place, exactly, zigzaggy. Sharon and I frequently look at each other and congratulate ourselves on what a great job we did in planning and carrying out our careers. And then we smile and go about our business, because we know there was never a plan. It was just a lot of forks in the road. Fortunately, most of the time we took the right fork. Sometimes we didn't, but most of the time we took the right fork. I have a little if I'm not doing this microphone properly, tell me. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is what I call my two careers, my two loves in my professional life, the things that I did that I would go back and do again if I could, because I really enjoyed them. Some of the other things, I could do or do without. But these two things. Now, I have to give you a little background first. First of all, I am the first Sexton in my line to have a college education. Okay, it almost didn't happen. I was a very, very poor high school student. I just wasn't interested in what they were doing, and so my guidance counselor at graduation time called me in and suggested that I never attempt college, that I should find a good trade school, learn a trade, earn a living, be productive in the citizen. And I did that for 2 years. I went to a trade school, worked in the daytime, went to trade school at night. And at one point I decided I better to do something. I better go to college. But anyway, we'll get to that point. But let me show you some pictures first. And a little more background. What did I do wrong? Did I hit the wrong key? Oh, okay, push down. I was pushing up. Okay, I'm sorry. This picture, I have to show you. I found this picture when I was at that's my dad, by the way, and he passed away a number of years ago. And when I was going through some old papers and his old seaman's wallet, I found this picture, and I love it. My dad was a merchant seaman during the war. He sailed for the Army Transport Service, and that's the uniform he's wearing, the Army Transport Service uniform. But he was a merchant seaman. He was a civilian in those days. It wasn't until 1988, long after my dad had passed away, that Congress said all those merchant seamen who sailed during the war should have veteran status. And in 1988, they were given that status. But anyway, that's my dad, and the other guy's me. But because of his days at sea during the war, he always had lots of sea stories to tell. And I was raised on those sea stories. And very early in my life, I decided I was going to be in the Navy. In the Navy. So this picture was taken in 1961. 2 years after I got out of high school, I was in that trade school for a couple of years. And at one point, I decided I really needed the college education. And whether that I could do it or not, I didn't really know, because I'd been told I couldn't. But I decided I'd try it. But before I tried it, I wanted to make sure. In 61, things were starting to heat up in Vietnam. And so I decided that I better find an alternate to being drafted, because I was 20 at that point. So I enlisted in the Naval Reserve, and I had a deal with a recruiter, and I enlisted in a 2x6 program. It was 2 years active duty, 4 years reserve time, and you were supposed to do the 2 years active duty immediately, and then the 4 years reserve time. But I made a deal with a recruiter. If you've ever dealt with a Navy recruiter, you'll have to understand that you need that they'll offer you anything. And so what he said was, well, we'll let you do the 4 years reserve time first, and then the 2 years active duty. And he held it to that. That worked. So I got through college. I went to Virginia Tech. I did my enlisted time in the reserves that first 4 years while I was at Tech. That's Randolph Hall, the home of the mechanical engineering department at Tech, and I spent many, many, many years there over the years. But those first 4 or 5, and then I graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering. I'm sure that my high school counselor was rolling over in her grave at that point, but I did, and I got through, and I loved it. I loved mechanical engineering. I loved going to tech. I was very happy. When I graduated from tech, I was commissioned. I had to extend. I was reserve officer, so I had to extend from a 2-year obligation to a 3-year obligation so that I could get the commission, and I did that, and that's me. That picture was taken. You remember some of you that are from around here. Remember the old Reserve Center down on Reserve Avenue? That's the building I was in. That's the building where I did my drills, and that was the building I was commissioned in. That building's gone now. They tore all those buildings down. But let me see. In the summer of 1966, that was the summer that I graduated. That was a big summer for me. I graduated. I was commissioned. I got orders to Minesweeper School in Charleston, South Carolina. I also got a set of orders to a Minesweeper out of Long Beach, California, that was headed to Vietnam. But I had the summer off. I mean, the summer in Charleston. The young lady there I met in Charleston. That's why I say it was an exciting summer. And but at the end of the summer, she had to go back to school in New York. Her dad, who was Navy at the time, was also Navy, had transferred to Rota, Spain, with a ship that he just picked up, and I was off to Vietnam. So didn't get to see her for a while. We'll get back to that. That's the first ship I was on. It's a Minesweeper, 170-foot wooden-hulled, diesel-powered Minesweeper out of Long Beach, California. When I got to Long Beach, she had already left for Vietnam. So I checked in with the squadron. They put me in an airplane to Pearl. They flew me to Pearl Harbor. I caught her there, and we finished the trip. While we were transiting, I qualified as officer of the deck underway in formation steaming, which is a big thing for a young officer to do. Didn't have much choice. It was a Minesweeper. It was 6 officers total on board, the CO, the XO, and then 4 junior officers. So we junior officers had no choice. We had to qualify so we could keep the ship going. So I qualified that on the transit over. When we got there in November, actually we arrived in the combat zone November 11th. I always thought that was appropriate to arrive on Veterans Day. And this picture was taken in Cameron Bay. We were anchored out. The skipper and the XO went ashore because they were going to be briefed by the commander of Task Force 115, which is the group we were joining. Task 115 was the task force that had coastal surveillance responsibilities. So rather than minesweeping, which was probably a good thing, we were doing search and seizure ops up and down the coast. At that point, the North Vietnamese were smuggling supplies into the south, using junction sampans coming down the coast, and we were searching and seizing those things. So that's what we did until the following May of '67. We finished our tour there, and they sent us home. This picture was taken in Subic Bay on the way home. I'm standing in the way. Taken in Subic Bay. The skipper was an old Mustang. In Navy terms, that means he came up through the ranks, so he'd been in the Navy a long time. If you notice the other 2 pictures I showed you of me sitting on the bridge, I was wearing a ball cap and T-shirts and shorts and that sort of stuff. We were McHale's Navy, if you remember McHale's Navy. We were really that kind. So when we stopped in Subic on the way home, the skipper said we were going to have a personnel inspection. He said, "I want you to all look like sailors when we get back to Long Beach." And so this is my skipper in the front, probably the best naval officer I ever served with. Really liked the man. And the young ensign behind him, of course, is yours truly. And those are some of the sailors in my engineering department. I was the chief engineer on that ship. Anyway, then moving along. So I got back to Long Beach, and I asked the skipper, I said, what's the plan, skipper? What are we going to do? And he said, well, now this is the summer of '67, and he says, we're going to bring on some more crew, train them up. The boat's going to be in the yard for a little bit, needs some maintenance work. And then early in '68, we're going back to Vietnam. And I said, Skipper, I've been there and done that. And he said, oh, Mike, he says, there's nothing more important to the Navy right now than these deployments to Vietnam. I said, okay. With a sort of a sad face, I said, okay. And it was just he and I sitting in the wardroom talking. There was nobody else around. And he said, Mike, he said, I did hear that the Bureau of Personnel is looking for volunteers for submarine duty. I said, Skipper, I volunteer for submarine duty. And he said, you don't really mean that. Yes, sir, I mean that. I was young and didn't know any better. So he agreed. He said, okay, if that's what you want to do, he says, I'll write you a recommendation. Within a few weeks, I had orders to Submarine Base New London for sub school, 6 months of sub school. Showed up. Nice thing about sub school was it was in New London. It was a 2-hour drive to Tarrytown, New York, where I knew this young lady in college. And so that gave us the opportunity to get back together. And also, while I was there, I was taking the diesel program, 6 months of diesel submarining. One of the instructors called me in one day and says, you really don't want to be a diesel submariner. He says, you want to go to nuke power because that's what's going to be the future. And I said, sure, how do I do that? And he said, you just volunteer for submarine school. We'll send you down to Washington to talk to the admiral, and you'll be in the program. I said, okay. Now, the trip to Washington to talk to the admiral is a long story. I'm not going to go into that. But it was, but I did. I made it. And then, but before we could go to that, and when I graduated from sub school, I had one other important thing to do. Yes. My kibbutz are over here, is not. Yeah. We were married in New London. After I graduated from sub school, we spent the next year going through nuclear power school, nuclear prototype, and finally, when all that was done, I got to a submarine. USS Sunfish, SSN 649, home ported back in Charleston again, and we got to go back to Charleston. And unfortunately, our ops were all classified, so I can't tell you a thing about it. Other than we spent many weeks, months up very far north, above the Arctic Circle, under the ice, doing secret stuff. She said that. I did not say that. She said that. But anyway, we were doing. It was the Cold War. We were doing Cold War ops, so we were up there, poking around doing stuff. And I did that for a couple of years, almost 2 years, and then we talked and decided that it was time for me to leave the active duty. I went back into the reserve program, found a billet, and I went back to grad school. That lady in high school didn't know what she was talking about. By that time, I was convinced she didn't know what she was talking about. I graduated in college. I got through the Navy nuclear power program, which is probably the most academically strong program of any of the services. I can't speak for the Army and the Air Force, but certainly in the Navy, it's the most academically challenging. And I got through those. So I figured I can do graduate school. So I went back. We moved to bought a home in a townhouse in Blacksburg, and I did a master's and a PhD in mechanical engineering. And then, of course, I was looking for a job. Now, there's some gaps in here that I'm skipping over. Well, I did a few things before I got to VMI. I had another teaching post before I got there. It was a nice job. The students were good. The faculty were good. I wasn't real happy with what they were expecting of faculty members. I had done a year teaching during my graduate program, during my doctoral years. And I thoroughly enjoyed being in the classroom and talking to people, talking to cadets, students. And the university that I taught at, they wanted me to do research and write papers. The more research I could bring in, I was successful. I could do that. I just didn't like it. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. So I left that university. I won't name any names. Some of you know where I was, but so anyway, I found this job at VMI. VMI didn't have a mechanical program, engineering program, until about 83 or 84. They started the program. In 85, I was having dinner at an ASME an ASME dinner, and there was a table of faculty people sitting there, and I was sitting there and talking with the guy sat next to me was Richard Trandle. He was chairing the new Department of Mechanical Engineering at VMI, and I was fussing about, I didn't do it. I said, I want to teach something. He says, don't worry. He says, you come talk to us. We'll make sure that you get all the teaching you can handle. And so I did. I went up, interviewed, talked to the dean, who was John Knapp at the time, and they hired me. Said, yep, we'd like to come. They hired me as an associate professor. I'd been an assistant at the other place, so it was a little promotion. And let's see what I got now. I don't remember what I got next. Oh, yeah, I'll get to it. So they hired me in 85 as an associate professor. In 1990, they promoted me to full professor and asked me to chair the mechanical engineering department. John Knapp was still the dean, and he called me in and he said, Mike, Dick Trandle, the previous chair, is stepping down and would like for you to be the new chairman. And I said, gee, General Knapp. I didn't call him John. General Knapp, I said, gee, General, I said, I really appreciate the offer, but I don't think I want to do that job. And he said, Michael, you don't understand. I want you to be the chairman of the department. And I gave him a cheery, aye, sir, and became the department chair. Along the way, I was promoted to full professor, as I say, in 1990. A few years later, I was awarded what VMI calls a institute professor. Everywhere else in the world, they would call it an endowed chair. It was an endowed position, endowed by the Luck family from here in Virginia. And I was given a nice increase in pay because it is an endowed position. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. In 2007, I retired from the Institute. I had retired from the Navy, the Naval Reserve. That 2x6 program that I signed up for lasted 35 years. I retired in 1996 from the Naval Reserve as a captain, and to my pleasure, the faculty at the VMI wear the uniform. So I continued to wear the uniform, and in 2007, I retired from the Institute. My 22 years at the Institute were probably the best professionally, the best years I had. I loved it. I loved teaching. I loved the cadets. somebody asked me, well, what kind of students are they? And my answer was, they're not all scholars. I wasn't a scholar. They weren't all scholars, but they knew what they wanted, and they were willing to work for it. And that, to me, was the essence of what a good student should be. And many of my students have gone on to do careers in engineering. A number of them are now retired as colonels and Navy captains, and been very successful. So I'm very pleased. Every time I run into one of those guys and find out what they're doing, and it just makes me happy. And they were just good kids. The young ladies came along. I forgot what year that was. I always thought they sort of added something to the place. I know a lot of the alums were totally against that, but I thought it sort of raised the academic standards a bit. Not that they were better students, but the guys didn't want to let them get away with getting better than they did, so they started working a little harder. Anyway, that was just my perception of how that came about. Along the way, besides the two careers, I have a family. This picture was taken in 2018 at our 50th wedding anniversary. We redid our vows in church that day, and you can see that the crowd is growing. And that's what I got to say. So, any questions?
What was that other institute you did not want to mention? Other college. The University of.
My other teaching post was at the University of Virginia, and I thoroughly enjoyed the people and the students there. But I wanted to be in the classroom, and I was there 3 years. And I was doing the right things. I was going out and getting contracts, bringing in money. And what they did, when you got a contract, they would start paying you out of the contract money rather than out of the teaching money, so they could reduce your teaching load. The third year I was there, I taught 2 courses. One course in the fall semester was an undergraduate course in heat transfer. I met the class 3 times a week, 3 50-minute classes. Then I had a graduate student who met all the help sessions, and I had a senior who had taken the course that graded all the papers. So my teaching load was 3 hours a week, and that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to teach lots of students, lots of classes, because that's what I enjoyed. The second semester of that year, I taught 1 heat transfer course to 6 graduate students. And that wasn't, I know it's a good school, and I know there were great people there, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the classroom. When I got to VMI, I was teaching 3 or 4 lectures a week, 3 or 4 classes a week, which was 9 or 12 lectures, and usually a lab or 2 in the afternoon. So I was doing what I was happy. I was there. I was doing what I wanted to do. I was teaching cadets, students, what I thought was important, and I liked that. Yes, ma'am.
How many kids do you have?
I have 3. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The 3 of mine are Michael, my oldest, Michael Ray, Wayne Randolph. Guess where the Randolph came from? He hates that he's named after a building. Actually, he's a doctor, has a doctorate in mechanical engineering as well. Did the bachelor's and the master's at Tech. Unfortunately, decided to go somewhere else for the doctorate. Then this is Pauline over here. They're all Hokies, by the way. And Pauline is industrial and systems engineer, bachelor's and master's at Tech, and she builds tires. She works for Michelin in South Carolina. She is the highest ranked woman in Michelin's North American plants. I got that right, I think. And this lady here, unfortunately, we lost back in April, is my mother-in-law, Sharon's mom. She was 98 when we lost her in April, so. Yeah. And the rest of them are spouses and grandkids and there's one adopted daughter up there, yes. Mary. This is Jenny. Jenny's Mike's wife. Mary is Jenny's sister, and we sort of adopted her as part of our family, and her 3 children. She was married to a naval officer, and they had a bad divorce, but that's another story.
Tell us a bit about your banjo picking and also the 4-legged member of your family.
My banjo picking, I have a rule that I learned in the campgrounds long ago that I apply here as well. I don't play the banjo before 10 in the morning or after 10 at night, so that the neighbors don't have to listen to it. When I retired from VMI, 2007, my wife bought me a retirement present, a banjo. She says, I know you've always said you wanted to learn to play the banjo. You got nothing else to do now. Here's your opportunity. And I love it. I try to play every day. When we were in Lexington, there was a group that I played with, and we played together twice a week, and once a month we gave a concert at the senior center for anybody who wanted to come and listen.
Can we sign you up for a concert here?
We'll talk about that later. Yeah, that's good thinking. Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say about Murphy? Oh, Murphy is in this June will be 16 years old, so he's got a lot of years on him. Doesn't see very well, doesn't hear very well. The banjo doesn't bother him at all, and he's got arthritis very, very badly, and it's hard for him to get up, and so he's suffering, and so. Anyway, but he's been with us for almost 16 years now, so.
You were discouraged early in life of continuing with an education. Did that inspire you in later years for your desire to teach students?
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, the cadets, students I had at VMI, all had focus. They weren't scholars. Again, I wasn't a scholar, but when I was in school, I knew what I wanted, and I was willing to work for it. And everybody that I had at VMI had that outlook on life. They knew what they wanted. It wasn't always a degree in engineering. Some of them just wanted to get the commission, but that was all right. They had to do the degree first. And so I think that was a good part of that, because I felt like I could help them do what I had to do years ago. So, yeah, I think that was the part of it. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
You want to share your affectionate name from the Corps?
Yeah. There's a sort of a thing at VMI. I don't know whether it's always been that way back when you guys were there, but in recent years, and probably earlier than that, typically the cadets had nicknames for all the faculty members. And I knew most of the nicknames for the guys in my department, what the cadets were calling them, but I didn't know what they referred to me as until I had a senior, a first-classman, signing up for his spring semester courses. And I was his faculty advisor, so I was advising him on what courses to take. And I said, you really need to take this course. I'm teaching it. And it's an elective, but it's a good technical elective. You'll enjoy it. You'll learn things. You'll be able to. And he says, no. He says, I think I'm going to take such and such. And I said, you know, what's the matter? And he said, Captain, we use the military ranks there. He says, Captain, he says, you do know what the guys call you? And I said, no. He said, Attila. So I let him go ahead and take the other course, but yes, sir. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you'd be willing to share with us some of the details of your interview with Admiral Rickover. I thought that was very interesting.
Very, very briefly, yes, I'll do that. As I say, when I was in sub school, they sent me to Washington to see Admiral Rickover. Admiral Rickover, in the early years, interviewed every officer in his program. Before you could get in the program, you had to go see the admiral. So I went to see the admiral and heard some stories, but anyway, I got to Washington, took the day off from sub school, went to Washington, and there was a group of us there to be interviewed, and to keep it as short as possible, when I went in, most of the day I was talking to people on his staff, but when I went to talk to the admiral himself, they didn't let me go in alone. I was a lieutenant junior grade at the time. I had to go in with a full commander as my escort. They wouldn't let you go in alone. And they had drawn on the blackboard before we went in, where the admiral's desk was and where the chairs were and what you're supposed to do. And I said, okay. And so the commander and I were walking down the hall, and we were here to that door in the corner from the admiral's office, maybe not quite that far, but pretty close. And the admiral's door was open. He was at the end of the hall, and he looked up at me as I'm coming down the hallway, and he started asking questions. And I didn't know any better. I'm going to answer his questions. He's the admiral. But he didn't stop. He kept asking questions right after the other. So I'm answering a question, trying to remember the next three, trying to get to the door, trying to get into the office to find the chair that they marked on the chalkboard for me to sit in. I sat in the chair, and I'm still answering questions. He's still 3 or 4 or 5 questions ahead of me. I sat in those days, we wore gabardine khakis. It was the summertime. Very slick. I sat down on this walnut desk chair that had about that much cut off the front 2 legs. It was a sliding board. I slipped right off the chair, ended up sitting on the floor. I'm still answering questions and still trying to remember the next 5 questions. At that point, he threw me out of the office, told the commander to get me out of his office. He says, get that man out of my office. He says, I don't want anybody like that in my Navy. At that point, I didn't want to be in his Navy. I went down the hall to pick up my orders from the secretary so I could get back to New London back to sub school. And the lady says, so Lieutenant, where do you want to go to to nuke school? And in those days, there was two basic schools. You could go to one of the locations. One of them was the Bainbridge, Maryland, which was the closest one to home. And but I said, I'm not going to nuclear power school. And she says, what do you mean you're not going to nuclear power school? And I said, the admiral said he didn't want anybody like me in his Navy. And she looked at me and smiled. She said, he tells everybody that. I said, send me to Bainbridge. The next thing I knew, I had orders to Bainbridge. So after our wedding, we went to Bainbridge.
Sharon, come up here. Yeah.
the kibitzer.
Yeah. Friends, how about the tale of two careers?
Thank you, everyone, for coming and listening to what I had to say.
Thank you. Good show.
Okay. Oh, 10 minutes over. That's not too bad. You said we could.
Very good.